Hello and welcome to this episode of Focus On. I'm Kiamakhatsi Mosipili. Globally, 970 million people are living with a mental disorder, with anxiety and depression being the most common. This is according to the World Health Organization. Today, we put the focus on mental health. We chat to two leaders in this space at the helm of October Health, a mental health app dedicated to democratizing mental well-being through scalable, preemptive, and proactive care. For more on this, I am joined by CEO and co-founder of October Health, Alon Litz, as well as the Chief Science Officer and founder, Alan Sweden. So I'd just like to lead the conversation to begin with why the thought to, open up October Health and what prompted its inception. I'd like to start with you, Alon.
Yes, I think you set the scene. I mean, unfortunately, there's a epidemic out there. I think it's something which we don't talk about as much as we should, just given the cost to the economy, to your point. There's a stat actually from Stats SA that estimates that about 14.5% of work hours are lost because of poor productivity linked to poor mental health. So if you're there sitting as a business leader and listening to this, and you think of your payroll and take that monthly payroll number and times it by 14.5%, it's a big chunk of your revenue and a big expense line item. If you put that in context of overall GDP, we speak a lot about load shedding and crime, and the reality is that poor mental health is having a bigger cost to the economy than those two factors. So it's something which requires intervention. It's a real impact. There's a real issue out there. It's something we don't talk about enough, and it's something that needs to be addressed.
And then over to you, Alan. I think also just when taking into consideration a business concern, right, besides the bottom line, just that human aspect of when you define the cost of mental health within the workplace, what is that? What does it look like? And why is it something that should be a priority for any business looking out for the future of their organization?
The priority for the business should be around retaining really valued staff, which I think is becoming more and more important as the landscape becomes more competitive. And the other part of it is that when you have good staff, what you want them to be is you want them to be invested in what they're doing every day, to find meaning in the work that they're doing. And in so doing, what you'll be able to do is reduce absenteeism and reduce what we call presenteeism, which is really being at work but not really being there and not actually being productive while you're there. So mental health has a massive impact on the attitude of workers towards their workplace, as well as what happens to them at home, which they will then often bring to the workplace as well. And that's where the biggest impacts are.
And also now moving over to some of the solutions that are privy to these organizations, which is something both of you are a space that you're working to develop and excel in. Just educate us just about some of the solutions that are available, but also the disconnect between what is available to the person undergoing or struggling with mental health and them receiving care. What does this mean, the 80-20 gap in mental health solutions? And what is the way forward after that?
I'm going to answer that question, and then I know Alon will have something to say about that as well. So the 80-20 aspect of it is that really what we're saying is that 10% of the workforce will have mental health issues, and they will get some care. And the top 10% of employees might get access to executive coaches and other kind of training, which will help them to really thrive within the business environment. And that's the 20% that we talk about. What we're saying is that 80% of employees are actually not looked at all because they don't have a clinical problem that warrants some kind of intervention, and neither are they the top performers that are given access to executive coaching. So there's massive missing, not even a middle, massive missing majority, which we're aiming to reach. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to say that we've created, what we have done is we've created a platform that really speaks to the whole employee database, the whole employee base, where they can go in and use the activities that are available to them through October Health, where they can engage actively. And the more that they engage, the better their mental health is, and that's where the proactive part of it comes in. The better their mental health is, the more they're going to be creative, and the more the return on investment is going to be to the company overall. And I'll hand over to Alon.
Your thoughts about that?
So I think just to add to that, I think the reality about mental health, and this is unfortunate, but it is a reality, is that often there's a lot of hesitation around getting help. Often people associate getting help with admitting that you need help, which for some people is a difficult thing to do. And what we're focused on doing is trying to reposition that, show that mental health is something that we should all aspire towards investing in. If you think about top athletes, right, if you think about yourself, you never think about running a marathon without training for that marathon, right? You would train and build up to get to where you need to be. But from a mental health perspective, we expect ourselves to wake up tomorrow and throw the, and deal with whatever curveballs life throws at us without investing in our mental health. So what we're trying to say to people is, listen, don't wait for that moment of distress. Don't wait for that trauma. Don't wait for that trigger. Invest proactively in developing the right skills and resilience, improving your mental toughness, your grit, your high agency mindset, all these things that you need to be better prepared to navigate life, because life is tough. It's only getting harder. There are only more changes. There's only more uncertainty coming. So we have to proactively invest to be ready to run those marathons that life throws our way.
So now, when an issue has been identified, whether it be from the perspective of the employee asking for help or an employer just seeing a decline in some of their top performing workers, just moving over to when now the decision comes to ask for those solutions, which is where both of you come in. One, I'm interested in the choice to develop an app, particularly, is there an advantage maybe in terms of access when it comes to that? But I also understand some of the figures you guys have given us is that your app has shown that it has improved the performance of employees by 15 to 20% and staff turnover as well as upwards of 40%. What informs this?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. So firstly, it's the solution available to the individual, right? So everything that we've designed from an employee-facing perspective, and we have an app and a desktop solution that's available for employees, is getting them into the system earlier on and getting them focused on developing those skills that they need to thrive. So the first feature that we offer are live interactive sessions. So these are sessions which at the moment are running for 20 hours a day on a broad range of topics. On one side, psychoeducation focused on building some of those skills that I mentioned, focusing on resilience, dealing with uncertainty, building grit, positive visualization, all these traits that top athletes have and that we know that individuals who thrive in the workplace need. On the other hand, with these live sessions, we have topics focused on things like depression or anxiety or imposter syndrome, whatever it is. But for a lot of people, what that does, it's a very low barrier way for you to connect with others that are facing a similar issue. And I think part of the challenge out there is so many people sit there and they deal with an issue and they feel like they're the only ones dealing with that issue. Whereas in reality, that's not the case. There are a lot of people who look like them, who sound like them, who are in similar situations dealing with the same issue. And with our solution, you can enter these sessions anonymously. You don't have to interact. You can just be a participant. No need to know who you are. And when you're comfortable, you can start opening up and sharing. So it's about access to that community. And I think another important aspect is, over time, you can start sharing more. Maybe you can start typing. You don't need to use your voice and share your experience with other participants or the hosts. And then eventually you maybe are ready for one-on-one care, but it's a very low barrier way to do that. We also offer a number of support groups within our app, which is a broad range of topics, everything for parents to neurodiversity to dealing with chronic illness, hopefully a group for everyone to connect with their own community that are dealing with a similar issue. And a lot of the thinking behind that came through Alan's experience at Akeso, where one of the most effective interventions that they offered in hospital were group sessions. So I'd love Alan to speak to that from his experience and the power of group therapy and group support in helping an individual in their healing.
And just also expanding from that, just some of the things that Alan has also shared from a psychological perspective, that ability to access these digital services within your organization, just weigh in as well within the development of this app. What are some of the advantages or that motivation as such within that space?
So what we wanted to do was we wanted to create communities, because what I found most effective when I was working in the mental health field and what I was working with there were people who were really suffering quite acutely from mental distress. And the things that helped them the most were being in sessions with other people who were presenting with similar kind of stories, similar kind of narratives and histories, where people could start to find, first of all, that they're not alone and that they're not unique, and they could learn from each other. And that's the thing that we really tried to develop, is this idea of the forest, which is part of the October Health app, which is where you can go into the forest and you can find your community that really cares for you. And in that way, you can get support in an anonymous and very accessible way.
So just briefly before we go, I just want to know, right, we're a business channel. Why should an organization put their money behind this? And just share a few examples and success story as to why this is a worthy investment.
Well, I think that the COVID pandemic was hugely disruptive, and really businesses closed down as a consequence of that. I think the mental health pandemic is a bit more silent, but I think it's as important to address that as it was to address COVID and all the aspects that come along with it. And I think that healthy employees create healthy companies, and healthy companies thrive.
Alan, I'm just also interested, besides just businesses hearing some of the ways in which they can improve their core functions or their human resource function through this app, why should they put their money behind this? And just share some of the success stories or case studies that reflect why they're worth this investment.
Yes, it's a great question. So outside of the fact that it's just the right thing to do for your employees, there's a Gallup study that estimates that over $10 trillion globally are lost because of poor employee engagement. We know that one of the leading drivers of poor employee engagement is poor employee well-being. So there's a huge opportunity for business leaders to unlock value, drive revenue, reduce costs, improve employee productivity by addressing this employee well-being issue, investing proactively in their staff. And as a result, you can reduce the cost of churn, where if you're sitting there as a business leader and you think about how much it costs you to replace a top performer, probably best case, you're looking at 7 months' salary. If you think about the time taken to recruit a new person, the time taken to train up a new person, and obviously that IP that you lose from a top performer, as well as potential recruitment fees that you spend money on. Similarly, burnout, huge cost to the business, best case, probably 2 months' salary of an individual. If you can prevent that from happening, obviously huge value to that individual that you're helping. But from a pure business cost perspective, you're saving money there, and you're ensuring that your employees can perform at the highest level sustainably. So it's the right thing to do. You can measure this all in real time using our analytics, using the generative AI that we make available to you as a business leader. And you can use that all to drive value back to the business. In terms of success stories, we've got some great clients that we're really thankful for in South Africa. Some names include Mazars, JSC, ENS, to name a few. And we've got case studies that we can share where we can showcase the benefits to the organization around increasing employee engagement, around reducing churn, reducing burnout, and delivering a really positive ROI back to the business.
Well, you've certainly mapped out some of the great advantages, but over and above, as I do agree with you, it is the right thing to do. But unfortunately, that's where we have to close off this conversation. And that's how we end this episode of Focus On. A special thank you to my in-studio guests. Always a pleasure speaking to guests in the flesh. This is the CEO, co-founder of October Health, Alan Lit, as well as the Chief Science Officer and co-founder, Alan Sweden. From me, Gamkhatsi Musipili, it's goodbye for now.